Good stuff. So today what we're going to do is obviously crack on with learning outcome 2. This is going to be a bit interesting, keeping in mind we get into the realms of consumer behavior and marketing management in particular. Now, in the first part, this particular unit, as I mentioned to you earlier, is primarily focused on understanding, 2 or 3 components of marketing management, which is the whole, sector or the whole module altogether when we study in, maybe other qualifications. But in the tourism and hospitality sector, what we want to be able to do is focus on 2 things. One is consumer behavior, which primarily helps us to understand, customer service, behavioral, types of behavior which the customer exhibits. And the second part would be to look at understanding, service related aspect of marketing. And that is where we'll dive into the marketing mix to understand which of the traditional, P's actually help us market the products and services within the tourism and hospitality sector and are 100%, kind of related to the aspect of providing the best customer service, quality of service, best customer service, good customer service, those kind of things. And that is what we're going to focus on today. So traditionally in learning outcome 2, we are going to be looking at, over the years, what has happened is when initially the marketing mix as a model was proposed, this was, proposed in the early, let's put it this, in the early 60s. And, it used to be the 4 P's model in particular, or basically 4 aspects of how the products and services could be considered from a point of view of, marketing. So price, place, product, promotion. These were the 4 P's. But as the years have passed, a lot of different authors and, marketing gurus have actually added additional P's, and that's how 4 went and became 7 P's of marketing. At some stage in the I would say in the 1990s, it became 8 P's. 1999, 2000 became 8 P's. And then in 2008, the 9th P, which is payment, when e-commerce became, quite something which everybody looked at, buying, selling online products and services also started to become online. Then what happened is one of the professors, Brian, Fox, basically proposed the 9th P as the payment. And this is what we will need to look at in this particular learning outcome. Now, first part would be focused on understanding what is marketing P's, what is the marketing mix in particular, how do we define that. Let's look at focusing on a few slides to kind of study this concept of the marketing mix, and then after that, what we want to be able to do is understand how the 4 was extended to the 7. That was called the extended marketing mix, and then finally, when we look at the 9 P's, we look at the full, let's put it this way, the full 9 P's altogether to understand what they do and how they are related to the tourism and hospitality sector. The second part of the learning outcome, which is the assessment criteria 2.2, actually looks at applying this extended marketing mix to a particular organization in this sector or a business within this sector. And we look at very briefly, so this is more of an exercise, and I think I'll give you an idea towards the end of the session in terms of how to address this. But the idea would be to show its application, what we are studying in terms of the marketing mix, the 9 P's. What we have to do in task 2.2 is to basically show the application of these 9 P's and how we can apply to, say, a business like the airline business. With the airline, you just look at, Virgin Airways, or you look at a hotel and look at how do they go out and provide, do marketing, provide these products and services, advertise, promote, using the marketing mix, which is 9 P's. So let's get into, you're able to see my screen? Yeah, okay, good stuff. So let's look at, what are the elements and, why this is particularly important. Any idea in terms of anything that you can think of, when you say, why do we look at the whole concept of, marketing mix? Any idea on that? Right, okay. So let me define by this, by saying that, when you look at the concept of marketing mix, the term actually came across, it was introduced in the 1960s. But the reason why it was introduced is marketing as a subject considered a lot of things. There are lots of factors, lots of reasons why companies do marketing. But some of the key essential factors, the combination of these key essential factors, which allows the company to control its sales or its activities of these products and services when they go out to consumers, was actually coined as a marketing mix. That was the reason why they said the factors which can be essentially controlled by the company or the organization selling product service to consumers was defined as something called the term called marketing mix. So if you look at the product, if you pick up any of these four, and why this was only comprised of these four factors is that when you look at any of this factor, when you choose product, for example, you can actually, depending on the product, you can define what price at which you will sell, where you will sell, what kind of promotional activities, advertising, sale activities you will do to be able to sell that product to the consumer. So in isolation, none of these factors allow you to have a definite control over how these services could be sold or provided to consumers. So the reason why it was called the marketing mix is because they're related to each other, and without one or the other, there is no way that the company has full control on the activities that it needs to do to be able to sell these products and services to the customer. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, so when we look at the 4 Ps of when the term was coined in the 1960s, the 4 Ps were product, place, price, and promotion. So this is what you look at, 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side. At some stage over the years, some of the marketing gurus actually started to propose additional Ps, why they and with obviously reasoning behind in terms of why these were important and they needed to be considered in the marketing mix. So when you look at the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, when the mass production in factories started to happen, the consumerization, or we say most of these products that we used to see as products which were, let's look at, say, a television set, that used to be, it became mass production in the 80s and late 70s, early 80s. Before that, it was a premium product which was maybe available with only a few set of customers. So when that particular product became mass in terms of being produced to be able to be sold across to a number of consumers, at some stage, the packaging or the process through which, for example, packaging comes later, but the process through which it was being sold in terms of distribution, retailing, lots of different channels, that became important. And that is why this P or the extended 3 other Ps came about. So they talked about the physical product altogether, from what place it was sold, how it was distributed, how it was bought and sold, transported and then sold to the customer became important. The second part was the process. Now, when you look at late 80s and early 90s and late 90s, when the internet became available, and consumers started having access to the internet. And when we look at the .com bubble of 2000, and companies started to sell some of these products and services online, it became important that the process through which this product or service could be made available to consumers. Now, what are the various channels that we look at? One channel is you look at distribution. Second is you look at retailing. Third, you can look at is online or websites now. So these are various channels. You look at catalogs through which, I don't know whether you recall, maybe 10, 15 years back, even today, you look at catalog marketing, which companies do. Some of the drop-ins that you receive at your home is they drop you a catalog of products. For example, I know for sure in the UK, we get through, the catalogs for buying stationery or ordering stationery, tools, for example, if you work within the construction agency or industry, or for example, you work within an industry which requires you to buy a number of products and services like tools, other paraphernalia which is related to your profession, like, when you have people working specifically in the construction sector, you see catalog marketing still in place. So these were various channels through which products and services could be sold to customers, or at least they were an outreach channel which were available for the companies to publish details about the product, price, the features, and through which, when it was made available to the consumers, they were able to look at, making decisions or do some research or gather information and then essentially buy. And then one of the other P's which got added up at some stage was, the people. Because at the end of it, all of these products and services were essentially being bought by consumers, and they were classified as people. So this, the addition of these three P's, when we look at, the addition of three P's proposed by, say, for example, Nichols and Jolson, which suggested in the 1970s that, when products are distributed, you could have brown label or, white label packaging, but if you had attractive packaging, it kind of, drew attention of customers towards, the product or the service that you were trying to sell. So the fifth P, packaging, was added. And at some stage, later on when they proposed people, process, and physical evidence, they were also added. Now, the extended marketing mix that we look at, the addition of these three Ps, people, process, and physical evidence, were also important because they were added keeping in mind the service industry in particular. And when we look at studying tourism and hospitality sector, we need to look at these three Ps in particular, is because they are the most important three Ps in the services sector, keeping in mind they allow consumers to experience. When I say experience, relates to quality or service which they get, and it allows also these three Ps to help differentiate the levels of service or the levels of quality of service which the customer receives. And an example that I would give you very briefly right now would be, when you look at booking hotels, you consider stars: 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, and 7 star. So what these three Ps help to do is, when you look at physical evidence, you're looking at staying in a very good hotel which has certain facilities. So you're considering physical evidence. When you look at people, you're looking at basically the experience of getting the best quality of customer service, because you're spending, say, £80 a room a night, or you're spending £200 in booking a room per night, or you're spending £500 in booking a room per night. So you have different sets of features or benefits that you start to get, which essentially allow the hotels to differentiate the quality of service that you receive, or provide the quality of service, but experience that you receive at the end of the day. And that is what is more important. And then when we look at the process now through which they deliver this, is actually the process. So when you look at the hotel and then you say that, okay, hotels primarily provide you bed and breakfast and, boarding and lodging facilities with a bit of, restaurant or 24-hour coffee shop. But the moment you start spending on, rather than having your breakfast in the coffee shop, you go across to one of the restaurants, you spend a bit more. And when you're spending a bit more, what tends to happen is you're getting a better type of service at that particular, in that restaurant. And that process helps to differentiate why a coffee that you have in the coffee shop might cost you £2, but a coffee that you have in a restaurant while wining and dining might cost you £5. And that concept of service also then entails into something called hospitality, because along with the coffee that you're having in the restaurant is also providing you an experience of the ambience. You might be watching, for example, a football match, or you might be having some sort of an entertainment which will be possible within that place as against the coffee shop. So these kind of differences which allowed the service industry in particular to differentiate the proposition of selling their products and services to consumers, were later incorporated into the marketing mix, and they included people, process, and physical evidence. Now, at some stage, packaging was also added, and that became the 8th P. Nichols and Jolson actually tried to add that in the 1970s, but there was not enough, support and research available at that point in time. But when industrialization started, and obviously, packaging of the product became important. So an example here would be, when you buy an Apple iPhone and you buy a Samsung Galaxy, you find they spend a lot of money on packaging as well, because that tends to provide the experience when you unbox the phone. So it became quite important, and it was finally accepted as one of the essential Ps, which allowed marketers to advertise, differentiate, and use this as a as a long-term marketing ploy to be able to attract customers. So packaging was included. And then the last P, which I mentioned to you earlier, was included in 2008 into the extended marketing mix, which is why it is called the 9 Ps now. And this was because today, if you look at anything after 2009, 10, or anything after 2007 onwards, when the introduction of fiber internet, 2005 in most countries, let's look at this way, the developed countries, when the availability of fiber became, broad-based, that means most consumers had the ability to get fiber, that allowed websites to have complex transactions. And when e-commerce became mainstream, payment as a P was added to the marketing mix, because when marketers actually try and plan, if you wear the hat of, say, a marketing manager for a company, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a resort, it's an airline, or any sort of the key 5 functions that we look at within the tourism and hospitality sector, you at some point in time have to consider all these 9 different Ps to start looking at putting together a plan to go to market. Now, whether it is to do with the pricing of the product, you look at competitors, when you look at the product itself. If I look at Ryanair as an example, and this is exactly what we'll discuss in the second learning outcome, but just very briefly an example. If you look at Ryanair, the reason why budget airlines actually came across is what they kind of came in with the idea of capitalizing on the concept of budget travel. And budget travel as an idea started off in 2004-5 when when it was identified that in certain countries a lot of people not just travel now for professional reasons or corporate reasons, but they also travel for the sake of enjoyment, leisure, holiday, vacation. And this whole idea of Jet2 holidays, or Jet2, for example, the company which started off with this concept of having their own airlines, own hotels, and also having their own holidays, was an idea which primarily came in when they considered all the 9 Ps and how they would go across and disrupt the market. So when budget airlines came across, they only thought of the airline sector initially to begin with. But now, if you look at most of the budget airlines offer you, transportation, accommodation, hotels, and not just flights. So they see an integrated offering when they look at, advertising some of these things. And this, as a marketing manager's job, is to look at the entire mix of things which allows the company to control some of these services which the customers can get from the company, thereby maximizing the revenue which the company can earn from a consumer. And the invention of loyalty programs, all these things are a part and parcel of something related to studying consumer behavior. And these, let's say the loyalty program in particular, as an individual program, allows the marketers or the companies to understand the buying patterns, the buying behavior of the individuals, and that is where they can tailor some of these promotions and offers, which allows them to get repeat business from some of their existing customers. So when we look at the whole concept of this marketing mix, we look at basically understanding that it was the set of controllable factors which allowed the company to go across and provide these products and services in a way which will allow them to make money or generate profits. And over the years, this has expanded from the 4 Ps to the 9 Ps. Now, one of the things, obviously, which I will mention now as an integrated slide, if you look at, people, planning, products, place, promotion, price, partners, presentation, and, obviously you look at fashion. So there are different ways in which the classification of, the 9 Ps have been done. But essentially, when you look at the 9P model, and we look at the definition of marketing and the marketing mix. Now, Peter Drucker, is considered one of the marketing gurus apart from Kotler in this particular area. Now, he basically said, if you have to redefine marketing, if you have to look at a definition of marketing, what is the definition of marketing according to him? Now, these definitions have undergone a lot of change over the years as the business models have changed, the industry is changing, the changing landscape, kind of warrants the definitions to also be updated. But the base definition marketing remains the same. It talks about, the ability of the company or the organization selling products and services to understand the customer so that they are able to provide a particular product and service which best meets or fits that demand for that consumer. Now, if you're looking at buying a car, you suddenly become attuned to looking at, promotions or mailers or newsletters, emails, offers which are in the market because you are currently considering buying a car. But if you're not even considering buying a car and you get a lot of these promotional offers, mailers, mail drops and other things coming across to you from time to time, then in that case, you're not even, even considering that this is something that you will be looking at, buying. So when you try and fit the needs and wants of a customer with the type of products or services they are looking at buying is essentially the whole process of, marketing. Now, there are some other definitions that are put across on the slide. Now, here, when we look at the 9 Ps, they can also be, used by companies to say that when they sell their products and services, they want to make the maximum profit if it's a private or a public sector organization, which is a business set up to make, profits. But even if it's a non-profit or a, NGO, non-government organization or a charity, they are also selling their products and services directly or indirectly to consumers. So when we look at charities, we say that, okay, the charities are organizations set up not to make profit, but they are providing services for the betterment of, say, a particular, objective which has been set. So when you look at Oxfam in the UK, for example, that's a global organization, works very closely with the government. Government, all to a certain extent in the UK, also provides them, with key objectives that they need to fulfill in order to secure funding. And they are the biggest funder as far as Oxfam is concerned, the British government. But when they do that, their activities are defined as not-profit, not-for-profit, because they are a charity. They are looking at, say, one of the objectives that they serve across the globe is poverty alleviation. That means that charity works in countries or underdeveloped countries to kind of bring people out of poverty. But when you look at that, and when they look at advertising, when they look at using the 9P model, the marketing mix in particular, they are also raising money through donors, charity, events. They also do a number of activities which allows funding to be collated or collected from, in the form of charity, from individual users like myself or, individual people. So when you look at the concept of the marketing mix, this can be broadly applied to all types of organizations, whether they've been set up to make profits as entities, or they've been set up as charities or, non-government organizations or cooperatives, not essentially making profits, but they also carry out these marketing activities to reach out to the customer. And that is where some of the standard definitions of these Ps do change sometimes so that it is adaptable or they are kind of customized, let me use the word contextualized, to the sector in which they operate, not customized, but contextualized. So if it's a charity, they will look at, planning as a more serious P because they have limited budgets and funds, and what they want to be able to do is utilize that to the best possible, their efforts. But if I look at tourism, then in that case, the tourism will end up, or tourism in the hospitality sector, they will end up using these 9 Ps, to look at including, say, one of the Ps, which is looking at processes. When I say process would be for a traditional marketing company, distribution, channels of distribution, logistics and things like that, because they want to bring efficiency in those processes so that their manufacturing process has more efficiency, their transportation process has more efficiency. But when I look at process as a P for the tourism and hospitality sector, that process entails that there are a set of standard policies and procedures in place which allow the, say, a hotel to deliver the best possible customer service using that process to their consumers, which allows them to have maybe a positive feedback, a positive review, a repeat business from the customer. And their definition of using the P in the process on this side changes to quality side of things, providing the best experience by ensuring that they provide seamless service. So that would differ slightly from a traditional FMCG company or a company which is into mass manufacturing, because their process or P in that process would be more oriented towards obtaining or maintaining efficiency and productivity in order to minimize expenses and maximize profits. Is that okay? Now, in the subsequent slides, what I've done is I've looked at some of the current definitions of marketing and related that to why it is changing. So one of the things which, the current CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, has mentioned to his employees is that our industry does not respect tradition. It only respects innovation. So when he looks at the definition of, 9 Ps, he calls innovation to be, also included under one of the Ps, wherein when you look at product, they are looking at bringing out innovative products to the market which meet customers' demand. You see how the definition of that P slightly changes to reflect the industry. Now, they are a software giant, essentially produces software for, gaming, for the websites. You have, mobile, you have lots of other different types of softwares, operating systems and things like that. But the key bit for them under product, and when they look at doing planning and when they look at doing research on what consumers want, they are looking at integrating innovation or marketing innovation, because that is what the customers are looking at in the product, right? When Apple introduced the iPhone after a number of years of research, now obviously we don't know the exact time frames, but what we read in blogs and the reports says that this particular product, when it was introduced by Steve Jobs in 2007 September, was under development for over a decade. So if you see the amount of money, research, time and effort which was put in to create a product which allowed consumers to do simple things like, I know we had a Nokia phone, I had a Nokia phone that allowed me to take photographs, but there was that camera, in the phone wasn't a camera which allowed me to take, colored photographs. Some of the best models of Nokia allowed me to take photographs, but it was like one megapixel or, 0.2 megapixel. But when iPhone was introduced, they introduced the concept of a front-facing camera and a back-facing camera, which allowed you to do FaceTime. So these were things which are innovative things which they consider under product planning to say that when we introduce products and we want to change the experience which the consumers gain, the definition of the P slightly changes according to which in terms of the sector, the industry they are operating in. So similarly, when we look at marketing processes and how they look at considering this marketing mix, they always look at analyzing opportunities. They look at developing strategies. You look at planning promotions. That okay, the Easter breaks are on. Most companies have already advertised, and say for example, sticking to the topic of holidays and vacations, we don't see adverts now from Jet2, Thomson, or say for example any other company being advertising holidays for now. What they're saying now is book your summer holidays, because the time for Easter has come and gone. So people would be looking at last minute bargains, but not many companies are advertising this. They're already planning ahead for summer in order to sell or basically do promotion of their products in order to sell holidays or vacations to consumers. And all this is something which requires different approaches from a company's perspective to manage the marketing effort. And when they look at managing this marketing effort, you don't have say a limit. You have always working with limited budgets. You do not have unlimited budgets. You have competitors which are also offering the same products and services. You have places. If I look at people going to say beaches or summer holidays, going to warmer places from the UK, there are limited number of places available for consumers to be able to book and go for that holiday. So when you look at all these nitty-gritty, at some stage you are able to neatly put this into a table that okay, product-wise, it's a hotel, flight ticket, accommodation, lodging and entertainment. When you look at price, there are so many other competitors offering, so the pricing starts at say £200, £400 per person, whatever it is. Then you go to, for example, promotion. How do the companies advertise? TV, radio, print. They look at various traditional mediums now through social media, emails, newsletters. You go to, for example, product, place. Now, what places are most popular? So companies would do research in terms of finding out, destinations which are required or destinations which are in demand where people actually travel during summer vacation. So, that decides place. And then they start to look at the extended mix of things like, you talk about physical presence, you talk about process, you talk about packaging, how you're packaging the holiday. So I'm not literally saying packaging, but how you're packaging the holiday. So sometimes when you book holidays, you see, okay, we'll give you 200-pound vouchers worth, free, or you get this if you book the hotel with us free. You book 5 days, you get the 6-day free. You book 7 nights, you get the 8-day free. So these are ways through which they are packaging the product or the promotion, and that requires, a certain amount of marketing effort. Now, with this, some of the other slides that I've put together are showing now a bit of contextualization of how the marketing mix is actually applied in tourism and hospitality management. So here, we have to consider everything with regards to a series of services which the customer actually avails when they are using the THM sector. So if you're traveling, you're using you're booking your flights, but you're booking a particular airline against the other because of the differentiation in service. So sometimes you want to travel and you look at budget airline, but sometimes you want to pamper yourself and you want certain things like, I want a meal, I want a, better seating, or, you want to look at, let's say, for example, a halt, I can't take a long haul flight, things like that. You're looking at differentiating between different types of airlines. So sometimes you might book KLM, even though the ticket and the pricing for that is more expensive than what EasyJet or Ryanair would provide. But here the concept of service and the differentiation in terms of the service that you expect from the airline to come in, say, for example, baggage allowance. Now, EasyJet and Ryanair have started to charge you anything that you check in as a, anything that you bring in as a check-in baggage. But if it's a hand baggage, up to 10 kgs is allowed. But if you check in something, you're paying 22 or 23 pounds, depending on the weight of the, luggage that you're checking in. But if you want a normal service, wherein you expect 23 kgs or 25 kgs to be allowed, along with a handbag and things like that, you might be tempted that if you're going with family, I'll have to look at a traditional airline as against a budget airline, because I'll end up spending more than what I'm saving on the ticket cost with the budget airline. So when we look at the application of the marketing mix within the THM sector, we want to now understand in the next few slides what each of this P relates to when we talk about, say, each of them individually. So very briefly, if I look at product, for example, now the product, when we talk about can you think of, if I take an example of a hotel, what do you think is the product that they sell? What is the product for a hotel? That is correct. So when you look at an airline, what is the product for the airline? Absolutely. So when you look at product, the definition of the product, and if I look at, say, for example, Apple as a company, for them, the product could be an iPhone, an iPad, an iMac, physical products which they sell, which are products which consumers buy when they, obviously go into an Apple store and, choose something and they buy. But when you book an airline, when you book a room, you're actually using products which are classified as, products which come with some sort of a service. So you might want to book a deluxe room, a double room, a suite, a presidential suite, and this is where it starts to differentiate the products when you look at buying an iMac, a 21-inch or a 27-inch or a 27-inch with a Retina display. So the prices do fluctuate depending on the features and the benefits that you're getting in the product. And in the case of these features, they equate to what is called quality of service in the tourism sector. The reason why you want to book economy class or you want to book first class or business class is because of the differentiation of the quality of service that you will get, right? You might get more or less the same seating space, but because when you're in business class, first class, you have an access to, unlimited meals, a bigger chair, in-room flight entertainment, which is customized, and some of the other features that you get, which you might not get in the economy class. So that is where the differentiation tends to happen in terms of the quality of service that you receive, because this is not something that you can take home with you. But in the case of Apple, if you buy an Apple IMAC 27 inch, you are able to pay that and take it home with you. But in the case of tourism sector, what is happening is you've had a flight from, say, Manchester to Geneva, and you've availed of that service, and you're happy with the service that you've got, but you can't actually take it with you. So next time you book it, you again pay for it and again get the same type of service. If you're not happy, you upgrade or downgrade, or you choose a different airline. So here, the definition of the product relates to, it could provide you a product which is tangible. That means you can touch and feel. But in some cases, that product could not be, it could be intangible because it is providing a service to you, and service is related to quality in the case of THM sector. Okay. Now, when we look at price, we again look at some of these things when we look at, how this P is treated in the THM sector. Price in this case could mean operating costs. It could mean variable costs. It could mean profit margins. It could mean commission to intermediaries. So when I look at, if I say, when I say, for example, price. Now, price to me is price of the ticket. Price to me, when I'm in airline, is the operating cost. Price to me, if I'm providing and related to this sector, but I'm actually providing services to the airline like food, change of linen, a lot of other services, then it is looking at variable costs because it is a cost to the supplier, but it also is a cost to the airline because every flight you have to have drinks, meals, and a couple of other things changed and replaced, which meets the requirements of what the customers have booked the flight for. And these, depending on what type of services you provide, these have a direct impact on the profitability of the airline. So here, the key factors that you look at, are operating costs, variable costs, costs basically. So cost could be operating and variable, your profit margins, and your commission to intermediaries. If Ryanair is able to get customers to book on their site by doing promotions and cut out travel tour operators or other intermediary sites like Expedia, Skylark or Skylab, you have the one Kayak, for example. If they cut out these intermediaries, lastminute.com, they are able to sell that ticket at a full price, wherein they are able to book more profit margin on it than the booking coming in through one of these intermediaries. Is that okay? Now, when we look at the P, we can also look at the different types of how these P's would apply, and depending on which example you take. So sometimes when you look at price, you see discount pricing, you see variable price pricing. Sometimes you see airlines also advertising. I'm sticking to the example of airline. Airlines would say, fly from this place to this place for only £11. But there are only limited seats there, and that is primarily done because they want to create a bit of an excitement or, a booking frenzy in the market by advertising that there are tickets available, for £11 for a flight between Manchester to, say, Amsterdam, or Manchester to, say any other destination. But those are always limited, tickets which they are trying to sell in order to drive the demand for their product in the market. And some of these pricings, when the competitors do, or they create this, is basically called loss leader pricing. That means they're essentially not making a profit on this, not even breaking even. They're actually making a loss, but this is to help attract customers to buy more of their products. You see this happening in a retail shop as well, when sometimes during Christmas, in order to increase the volume of sales, they say buy two, get the third one free. So you and me very clearly know the third one, which is coming free, is the lowest cost product between the three items that you pick. But whether the organizations makes money or whether they recover that money in terms of the volume of sale happening, only the company would know. But in some of these cases, these promotions which are related to price could be priced, basically looking at a loss leader pricing. And then you have promotional pricing. So here, when I say the product, when you buy, you get another product free or 50% off, is actually a promotional price to say they want to increase the volume of sales happening. And this is in the airline industry. Sometimes when you look at bulk booking of tickets, you say you're booking 10 tickets, the 11th traveler gets 50%. Sometimes you look at, these are called, bulk bookings, which airlines do when they look at booking of rooms. When you buy a holiday offer, say if you're going for 14 days, they'll say, okay, you book 14-day holiday, you get 2 days free, or, if you book 7 days holiday, you get 1 day free, something like that. Or you get some additional freebies thrown into the holiday because you're staying and you're spending that much of money with that hotel or with that particular business organization. Similarly, if we look at place, that's Justin joining in. So when we look at place, here the place is where the tourists actually visit and stay, and this place essentially would be hotels. It could be bed and breakfast. Hi, Justin. This could be bed and breakfast. This could be other types of stay facilities which could be related to looking at resorts. It could be related to let's put it this way, anything which allows you to stay at a particular place, and that would be classified as a P in this case. Then we have promotions. In some cases, when you look at the promotions, what you're looking at is how does the tourism and hospitality industry essentially look at promoting these products and services. So how do hotels sell their rooms? What are the ways in which they, for example, sell the unutilized capacity? Sometimes you see within, I've seen that happening within Travelodge Premier Inns, is now that they display pricing outside the hotel. So what they do is, during the weekdays, you will see normally pricing of the rooms dropping to about 30, 32 pounds per night. But during the weekends, when they know there is a lot of booking happening, or customers are normally going to be, depending on the trend they know, because of research and the previous data on sales available, you see the weekend prices tends to go up, or pricing tends to go up sharply when away games are happening. Say, for example, in football, and you will see that a lot of fans would travel to stay overnight in away games. In those cases, the prices tend to rise. But if you book in advance, sometimes when you look at airline tickets, if you book 3, 4, 5 months in advance, some of the advertising that they do, will give you discounted pricing for some of these products, because this will allow them to sell the capacity and bookings for a longer duration, which brings what is called predictability into their business. But promotions can be of different types under the P. You have above the line, you have below the line. Above the line promotions tend to be when you're advertising on mass media or communication mediums, which allow you to reach across different types of customers, and they tend to be TV media. When I say TV, radio, and newspaper. Below the line tend to be promotions which are primarily segmented to a particular types of audience, a particular location or an area, and they tend to be things like catalog marketing, flyers, inserts, couple of other things that you're doing. But nowadays, you look at social media, you look at online, that side of promotional activity is much more prominent. And what we've seen in the last 2-3 years is that the spend which companies are doing online in terms of advertising or promotions has increased tremendously, wherein it is dwarfing the spend which companies are actually doing on below the line promotions. Or below the line promotions could also include things like when you do road shows, events, canopy road shows, and things like that, which is tactical in nature to try and attract consumers for bookings and other things. But these side of promotional activities are decreasing, and the online spend is increasing sharply, because a lot of companies now are able to reach consumers through social media and also through other devices apart from the PC and laptop, which is primarily the smartphone. Now, coming to the the 3 extended Ps, which are important when we look at the services side of why they were added in the early 1980s, and they were added because the Ps of physical evidence, people, and process specifically focus primarily on the service sector, and tourism and hospitality are primarily within the service sector. So here what I've done is I've added a few slides to explain how tourism, how hospitality actually looks at treating these 3 extended marketing mix Ps, from a point of view of utilizing them for reaching out to consumers. So physical evidence talks about, sometimes when you look at, if I look at 10 years back, 20 years back, rather than not 10 years, 20 years back, you will see that most of the consumers booked, say, vacations tickets through the tour operators. There was no such medium available or commonly available medium to be able to compare offers and, see things which were available primarily, in terms of virtual tours. So what happened is you traditionally booked a holiday, you asked a lot of consumers or friends and relatives that, okay, how's your experience been? Have you traveled to the location? Which is the best hotel to go? What are the airlines that you would suggest and things like that. But over the years, this has changed from testimonials which were printed out or adverts or details of the facilities, benefits, advantages which they provided through brochures, promotional material has changed to something called online. So you see now reviews, you see surveys, you see a couple of these things being added in terms of the material through which customers now can easily compare, and they can easily compare two different types of services. But this, when we look at the P, which is physical evidence, did not this was not, when it was not a part of the marketing mix, wasn't available. But now consumers are able to do this at a click of a button by going onto the internet or using social media or going onto review sites which allow you to look at some of this information, compare this information, and then reach a decision in terms of booking something. We look at people. Now obviously this industry, as heavily relies on people to be able to provide most of the services that you get. So when you look at airlines, you have air hostesses, you have pilots, you have lots of other people off the plane, on the ground, which are providing a particular type of service, which allows this whole activity to actually work. So when you're traveling and you're taking a flight, if you kind of visualize how it starts off as a process, once you book the ticket, you reach the airport, you go into the particular counter, you check in your baggage, collect the boarding pass, go through the queues of security, get the security, fisking and other things done. At some stage you're cleared, then you go into your waiting lounge area, you board the flight, you're greeted by somebody, and when you're in the flight, when you're flying actually, you're availing the service, but you have some people still serving you at that point in time, and that could be the pilot, which is obviously flying the flight, your air hostesses and stewards, which are primarily serving drinks and meals. But again, the same process repeats when you deplane from the flight at a destination. And this industry, so what I'm trying to highlight is this industry is people intensive. It requires people to be able to provide service to other people, and that is why P in this industry is very important. If you look at a hotel, you're again using a particular service. You book the hotel, you've spoken to somebody, and you reach the lobby at the reception, you check in. When you check in, somebody takes your luggage up to the room. Or when you stay at the hotel, you utilize a lot of services. Again, there are people which are providing you the service. And when you check out, again, the same process starts. But again, this explains the importance of people within this particular sector, because it relies on people to be able to provide these services to people who are paying for these services at some stage. So P for people is quite important. Then we look at processes, and I relate processes to, the type of experience, the quality of customer service, and the type of service that you get in general when you use any of the, products within this sector, whether it's hotel, airlines, activities that you do at a resort, whatever it is. So when you look at P for processes, this is required because it allows consumers to be able to get service, for which they are paying for. So in some cases, these processes will provide you tangible service, and in some cases, these processes will provide you something called intangible service. So when we consider maybe a tour operator in general, if I look at this as an example, you will generally see the tour operators have a certain type of process that they operate with, and these processes, if I have to briefly highlight, which I've done on the slide through bullet points, is that tour operators, if you look at the traditional activities they do, what was the main aim of tour operators? What was the main service they used to provide? They were looking at providing you information about a destination. When you book tickets or when you book and avail their services, they were providing you itineraries in terms of travel itineraries, boarding passes, things like that, train tickets or air tickets. At some stage, they were also an intermediary between you and the destination of the place that you were booking a hotel in, because you were making payments to the tour operator, and in return the tour operator was booking a hotel in a particular location for you which you were visiting. And then when you are at that particular location, if you had also asked for services like other services like, for example, leisure activities or activities that you wanted to do with that destination, that was also something which the tour operators handled. So they were set of processes which were in place. That means they had tie-ups or they had agreements in place with some of these operators which were providing these ancillary or secondary services when you were at that place. Say, for example, you went in, you traveled to Kenya to go in and join a Kenyan safari. And there, your flights, your boarding and lodging, your activities that you undertake to visit, say, certain habitats or the parks, were also not directly provided by the tour operator or the airline or the hotel that you were staying in, but they were depending on certain other operators which had tie-ups with and formal agreements with this operator, which allowed them to seamlessly sell that service to you at some stage as an option. And when you availed of it, you see the tour operator doing everything in terms of the process, from starting from ticketing up until you land in that location to experience and obviously stay, and then go on that particular activity, which is the safari. Is that okay? Now, in the second part, I've not put anything in terms of for us to look at, but I hope I've given enough examples to look at how you will use the 9 Ps in particular to pick up an example either in an airline or a hotel, and then talk about how they apply the marketing mix, in terms of their organization by reaching out to consumers. So here, what I would suggest is, if I have to look at, say, for example, this particular criteria that we look at, I would suggest that if we look at something like this, you have a table. So in this table, what I would suggest is you put the marketing mix, element, and then in the next to it, you define an activity, and then you explain that activity in terms of, so here, for example, if I put product, you put the 9 Ps, you put price, place, and promotion, you put physical evidence, process, people, and then packaging. And then, because if you're taking an example here, so I would say an example which could be an airline or a hotel, and how would they apply this, into, each of the, how will they treat each of this marketing mix is what I would suggest that you explain in that example. So here, if I say product, what is the product for the airline? It's seats. And what are the different types of seats? You have economy seat. You have business seats. Sorry. And then you have first class seats. And in some cases, some airlines also have, what you call personal cabins. Like you look at the Emirates and things like that, you have access to a personal cabin and a lounge, personal cabin, which gives you access to a lounge. So some of the Airbus A380s, or when you look at the Boeing 777s, they have that facility wherein the customers are able to get these kind of products from the airline. So here you are able to get, and even in seats, I can do a classification of a window seat and an aisle seat, a seat with an extra legroom space, especially those which are towards the emergency exit, or the aisles when the aisles are actually beginning, and that is where they will be classed as products. Now, how do they sell these? How do they position these products? You can basically explain this here briefly. Similarly, when I look at price, you look at when they look at selling tickets, for example, the tickets could be economy tickets, first class tickets, business tickets. You have group bookings or bulk bookings, and that is where it explains that. Place could be a destination that you're flying to in that context. Promotion could be when you see them advertising on TV, or say, for example, radio, or you have some sort of promotional, newsletters, things like that through social media, and what you will explain here. Physical evidence would be the concept of what is called the, you taking the actual flight and the process of actually getting things like a boarding pass, a ticket, and the service that you get in the middle. Process is when you go through the process of booking the ticket. And people this is where you get the service in terms of, in-flight service, when you are checking at the counter, checking in for the flight. So that would be classed as, service. And physical evidence would be how you go about, say, for example, I would say it could also include booking, how you book a ticket, how you book a ticket, or say, for example, you, in this case, when you look at, checking in to the physical evidence would also include things like, lounges, which you get as facilities, and, the physical evidence of you getting a boarding pass plus a ticket when you book. So if you use this as an example, maybe in a tabular format, will help you cover, I would say, the use of 9Ps model to analyze the marketing activity of a tourism business. So here you have to pick up a business. So now what I've done is I've put in an airline, but I could basically class this as, so here I've said an airline or a hotel, but I would say an example, say Virgin Airline, or you look at British Airways, whichever one, you want to pick out. Or if you want to pick out a hotel, you could look at, say, Hilton Hotel, JW Marriott, whatever it is. And, you talk about their product, price, place, service, promotion, and that is what will cover the task 2.2. Is that okay? Good stuff. Now, on the Moodle, what I've done is I've also uploaded, the presentations for LO2 with, 2 handouts. LO3, I'm just about in the process of completing learning outcome 4, which should also be, in the next half an hour. And that would also be something, if you want to read proactively further, you can go ahead and read, the learning outcomes as well. But we'll cover, LO3 next term in the next session. So the idea would be to try and focus on, completing this, because I think it's a smaller learning outcome, quite an interesting one. And it is going to be interesting doing, some of the reading specifically, the extended marketing mix. In some of the slides, I put in some comments or speaker notes, which will give you some idea in terms of where I've taken the material from, because this is very much updated. And you will see that in some cases I've left some of the hyperlinks on, so that if you want to get into a bit more detail looking at the history, you will be able to click on that link and it will take you to that place where I've taken the material from. Good stuff. Any questions on this so far? Okay, no worries. So with this, what I'm going to do is end the session here. I think Justin was